We're really pleased to have the Hanscom folks here because it's the only Air Force facility in the New England area. It's a huge employer and, in our region, and actually really close by to our offices. So Tim and Bill, anytime we're in that building on 128 that you come by, and I know when I go out to Hanscom for events, one they had last week with the Secretary of the Air Force that I was privileged to attend. So, Tim Rudolph is their senior technical advisor. Handles, what I thought was interesting from anything that comes from the lab onto the warfighter. And, I don't want to take too much time up, but Tim's a senior person out there on the technical side. So those of you that are doing business with the Air Force right now, or particularly Hanscom, Tim's the guy that you want to know. So I want to introduce Tim Rudolph. Tim?
Well, first off, Bob, thank you. I appreciate this organization kind of embracing us with open arms. It's fantastic. We love partnership. The theme today is a great theme. And there we go. Okay. So strategic partnerships and in particular innovation. So as the Chief Technology Officer, primarily I'm looking at innovation and partnerships. And there's a young gentleman here, Adam Freudberg, who really is on the front line trying to help folks in many different disciplines, different businesses, different agencies to make those connections and keep me straight. So as Chief Technology Officer of Lifecycle Management Center, it's actually broader than Hanscom Air Force Base, which is the, go to that slide maybe. Oops. Which is that slide? Is the only active duty Air Force Base in the New England region, not only locally, but we know it does. There's an ecosystem that surrounds the base that includes partners of many sizes, large and small, traditional, non-traditional. We like to attract innovative companies. We have a great relationship and consistent with very large military industrial complex companies, but we're really trying to reach out to get those new, fresh ideas, whether they're existing products that are applied to us or whether they're totally new things. And if they're game changers, all the better. Then walk right in because I'd love to know about them and go. Let me see if I can make this work. So here's some stats on the base. As a tee-up man for the main event, Bill Donaldson, I'll give some introductory facts and figures. So acquisition, which should be interesting to all of you, our main mission is to acquire critical warfighting and support systems for the Air Force, and in many cases for joint, the other services and agencies, Navy, Marine, Army, intelligence agencies as well. Acquisition is a Defense Department and congressional term of art. It's kind of meant to be a catch-all. It can mean anything from purchasing technology, as we just mentioned, already available, to developing new technologies and moving that through a pipeline of maturity to productize. It's actually very important for us too. We want to grow business. The industrial base of this nation is important to all of us. So, and again, regardless of size, we need a vibrant economic base to not only for the New England region, but for the nation as a whole. At Hanscom, there's, which is more than 20,000 direct and indirect jobs, as you can see. But there are three major PEOs. Two have been around for a while: Command, Control, Communications, and Intelligence and Networks, and Battle Management. So the first is doing systems like running, controlling the air war. The second is actually having platforms to with sensors that support the warfighter. And there's a new PEO recently for nuclear command, control, and communications, which is really an integration control. That doesn't mean we're bringing any nuclear materials on base. We're not. But it's an important step because adding a PEO is a big thing, at least for us in the acquisition world. So here's another very intuitive slide. It's mainly intending to look at the three areas that we actually do systems for. So airborne, Air Force, airborne is important. That whole area layer. Space is very important and is not only the Air Force's domain, but it is primarily terrestrial on the ground. It's amazing how many ground systems the Air Force has, just as it's amazing how many Navy, how many planes the Navy has and how many ships the Army has. But there is a lot of activity there in the terrestrial. And the biggest one most recently, and it may apply to many members, both directly to your operations or directly to the products you're offering, which is cyber. And cyber permeates all these areas. It's non-physical. And from a perspective, in one of my side but very important jobs that I perform, actually one of the ones I get the greatest satisfaction from, is authorizing weapon systems and other systems to be, through a risk management framework, to be live on the network and actually fly and do its job. That's primarily for C2 systems and rapid cyber systems, but there are all sorts of threats. Our systems have all sorts of vulnerabilities, and we try to figure out risk from a perspective, long-range perspective, because we want to fly missions, we want to execute missions, and we want the warfighter to have the latest tools, which brings us back to the topic today. Innovation, partnerships are the best way to get what we don't know we need and to make it available in a way that's effective for the warfighter, and try to compress down our very arcane acquisition system. And events like this and Bill talking to you will help get that on-ramping to be available to make available those things. So we around the slide, we have very demanding customers. Again, back here at home, through central, eastern Massachusetts, all the way out to full Massachusetts and New England, we have a world-class ecosystem, and we're basically here only to deliver capabilities, airspace and ground and cyberspace primarily. So I'm trying to be acronym light, and if I fail, please kick me or throw. Hopefully most of the food is cleared. But here goes another intuitive slide we have. We just started recently a greater outreach program for the Hanscom Collaboration and Innovation Center. It's a facility on base, and I'm not selling a facility, but it is a place to touch industry, folks that are on the base, different government agencies, universities, and promote faster development, tech resources and transfer, better integration, kind of trial and error of different products, kick the tires, see if they're useful in our domain. And basically we have a great relationship, not only through the HKIC, but broader with state government, with a number of agencies. The HKIC in particular is responsible for doing a lot of cost cutting, but also delivering capabilities. So there's a small company, small business, AV Watch, who delivers aerial reconnaissance system, and we just recently put up a new tower which supports a broader connectivity to the Mass Emergency Management Agency, state police, you name it, Coast Guard, and their full motion video is part of the monitoring of the marathon route. So you can see that, and it was basically small piece parts put together with an aerial platform that very rapidly were integrated and made a great capability. We know the horrific event that occurred, so being able to rapidly assemble, not for that particular horrific event, but getting ready and prepared for every marathon since then. Some of the capabilities with a small business, with a couple aircraft down in Plymouth, with integrating cameras and other technologies, became a major capability for the state and for us. So we're trying to reach out. Again, most of the industry up there is small business. Raytheon isn't a small business, but and of course we're trying to attract small, medium, again large still, and startups, which I learned Friday in our discussions down with the state. You know, even startups have a slightly different road to hoe versus small business. And I came to government as a small business owner, so I can empathize and recognize, I think, the need we have for a very robust small business and the difficulty it is sometimes to contract with the government. So when you mention the grant program, that's fantastic. I can't imagine a better entry point to actually get traction amongst groups. I wanted to mention one last thing. There's something we're starting at that Hanscom Collaboration and Innovation Center called Plug Test. So Plug Test, again, is a way to kick the tires, trial products, maybe compare products, and look at not necessarily products, but solutions that can come in to solve a problem. And typically, what we'll have is a runoff. The warfighter, the user, the operator is directly involved, which is part of some of our problem, keeping that user, developer, acquirer together as a tight coupling is important. So they're actually in there saying what their real requirements are, right, real time. And they evaluate what comes out of the end of the exercise. So I wanted to mention this just as I get off the stage, simply because it's relatively easy to sign up for this consortium, to look at work. I'm not pushing it, but it's a consortium out of Air Force Research Labs in Rome, but this is where we're running our plug test events and some actually direct small business awards. So it provides a good opportunity to basically jump on board, on-ramp, come on board. So with that, and I want to introduce the Director of Small Business out at Hanscom Air Force Base, but he's the best small business director in the Air Force. He is, I was going to say lean and mean, but he's not mean. He is lean though. But he is tenacious in supporting small business and providing opportunities and making me aware of opportunities which are significant in terms of innovation and technology, and seeing how he can help. And that's really the point, and that's why he's the main speaker. So Bill, if you could come up. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of SBANE, and it's going to be hard to live up to that one, but we'll see what we can do. I am one of 170 small business specialists in the United States Air Force, and we have commensurate numbers in the other services, as well as other DoD organizations. I equivalent us to, and by the way, Ellen McDonald, who is probably better than me as a small business specialist, right here, stand up, say hi. So ping us. Thank you. And that was great, Dr. Rudolph. Just absolutely loved your presentation. Got a couple of key words out of there: industrial base, the Hanscom, HKIC, the Hanscom Collaboration Innovation Center, and you're doing excellent, wonderful work. All right, so basically, let me get back to the introduction. There's 170 of us in the Air Force. I look at us like Tenzing Norgay, you know, the guy who, the Sherpa who helped Sir Hillary up the mountain. We can't carry up, we can't ensure you're going to make it, but we can show you where other folks have fallen to peril, or other less risky ways to get to where you want to go. And we love our jobs. We think we have the best jobs in the Air Force. The Air Force small business specialists, as well as the other military small business specialists, mostly all have a contracting background. So we've spent billions, if not, more of your tax dollars, so we've been there and done that, and then they let us be small business specialists. All right, and small business specialist is kind of a misnomer to a degree, but let's go on with this. By the way, if there's any questions, please just blurt them out. I like to hit them real time, and it gives me a break. All right, so the federal contracting in Hanscom is kind of a unique can of worms, so to speak. Here's our missions. We have the area is C5 ISR contracting that Dr. Rudolph talked about in 3 program executive officer directorates. Does everyone, or by show of hands, do you know what a program executive officer is? Just a few. Okay, a public law in the 107th Congress, 107, in fact, established program executive officers. We have about 16, I think, in the Air Force now, and I think the Army has about 40-something, and then commensurate Navy number. It's where the leadership can point, the country can point to for responsibility of executing a program, in short. I won't go into all the legal ramifications of it, but it's great to have authority concentrated in a single area. That way with the decision, it hastens the decision-making process, and also allows for quicker delivery of programs, products, and services to our warfighters. All right, so I'm going to give you some, talk about the types of opportunities, the operational based contracting, the trades, all these things we affectionately call roads and commodes, things like that. We pretty much go to small businesses predominantly for those, about 65 to 80% on a daily basis. C5 ISR, that's the heavy lifting, command control, computers, cyber, communications, and so on. And we use a multi-award IDIQ contract called NetSense for IT products and services. We the Air Force recognize volume, economies of scale, volume discounts and the like when we use NetSense. It also helps to get product uniformity. We call it the McDonald syndrome. Like throw a bag over your head, put you in a car or plane somewhere, drop you off in a McDonald's, and you look at everything looks the same. You pull up the food, it looks like exactly the same. You don't know where you're at. It could be Seattle, Miami, Boston, or San Diego. That was one of the concepts behind NetSense at its inception. We are notorious for moving around resources, both military and civilian, and we wanted not to work with different operating systems, Unix and Apple, Solaris, whatever. We wanted to have that airman sit in the desk the next day and be ready to take on the mission. So that was one of the intents in NetSense, but the bottom line is we buy a lot of IT products and services through the NetSense contract. I will give you a little primer on that. And Ellen will have a list of contact information for us, and I'd like you all to take one and contact us. Like as the doctor said, we want to help you, okay? All right, so primer subcontracting. We give advice to small business. Primer subcontracting. Hanscom, depending upon the year, we have about anywhere from $3 to $6 billion of unliquidated obligation. That's money we get from Congress to obligate to contracts that year. And it's an estimate about $5 to $6 million a day, 365 days a year, and a quarter, whatever, and goes to small businesses. And I've had general officers call me on that one and says, "Hey, are you sure? Are you crazy? That's a lot of money to small business." I said, "Let's do the math, sir." So we sat down and we did it. When we award a contract to a large company, a Raytheon, a Boeing, a Grumman, a Lockheed, they only retain about 38 to 45 cents in the dollar. Typically, they flow the money down to the economy, to the industrial base, as Dr. Rudolph said. And a lot of the innovation comes from those small businesses, and everything comes from the small businesses. But the bottom line is, due to capacities, due to costs, due to employment levels and all that, large businesses are very dependent on small businesses also. All right, so I'm going to talk about primer subcontracting. Are you ready for prime time? Or sometimes subcontracting is probably the way to go. But nevertheless, those are some of the topics I'll cover. And again, if there's anything that really trips your trigger, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to talk about it. Operational contracting, again, it's a lot of trades, and I said over 65% goes to small businesses. We do grow the local economy in that respect. And there's our points of contact for those folks, and they'll be more than happy to talk to you. I even have a couple of prospects in here today that I'll be running to our base contracting folks and our civil engineering folks to look at. Some intriguing ones too. Okay, so the development production. There's a market lens, if you will, between development and production. Where does concept exploration end? Where does development start? Usually it's based on risk in both technological and manufacturing readiness levels. Is anyone familiar with those terms? Okay. Are you ready for prime time? All right, basically. And we have 3 PEO directorates, as the good doctor said. And most of our contracts are multi-year. There has been an impetus throughout the Department of Defense over the past decade or so to speed that up, to reduce the cycle time to get the goods and services to the warfighter. But usually, a lot of the big programs do move very slow throughout their developmental stages, and we eventually do develop it. But it's called investment in the future, and in the latest technology. All PEOs in the Air Force are dedicated to increasing their contracts, both prime and sub, to small businesses. And we are truly fortunate and blessed at Hanscom Air Force Base to have 3 PEOs who really get that and who work hard at it every day. And I was just with one yesterday for a few hours, and we discussed that. And we're relying on innovation and the things that small businesses can do. Not to the detriment of large businesses, we work with both, but the bottom line is a lot of innovation comes from small businesses. You would be surprised, over 75% of the citable patents now, and for the last 10 years have. And the Fortune 500 companies from the 1980s on, their population of employees has been pretty much static, whereas small businesses tend to grow and hire and grow and hire. Might get eaten up by a large business later on, but that's part of the plan. Okay, so our PEO for battle management and C3INN were recognized, in fact, for their over-the-top performance going to small businesses. Why were they recognized? Because they broke down a lot of walls. Basically, another term the good doctor used was life cycle management system. When you buy a car, that's pretty cheap compared to the life cycle of that car. And I'm not telling you anything new. The insurance, the bills, the tires, the maintenance, the everything. And we were a little hasty in previous years where we didn't bother to procure the intellectual property rights, the data rights. We need to go out to maintain the system for years on end. The B-52 bombers were, I'm over 60 years old, and the B-52 bombers are older than me, so we're still flying those. And it's kind of scary, but the life cycle management of them and like systems enabled us to get more mileage out of our taxpayers' dollars. So, we look at everything in the life cycle management now, and in concert with the SecDef's policies on better buying power, where we should now buy up front, invest up front in the data rights. We can go to various businesses and compete to follow on products, services, innovations, tech refreshes, and updates now, instead of just being in a monopoly situation where nothing good ever comes of that. So we do have diverse acquisition methods driven by the needs. And some of those are kind of just add water and stir, which I call, and some of them are really knuckle down and go in for bunker mentality for a long source selection. Our program management offices, that's like a beehive or an ant colony where everyone has their little job there. We develop the requirements. We don't build the blessed thing at Hanscom. Well, very, very few things. We develop the requirements. We develop the parameters in which we're going to judge and determine if the contractors are making progress towards our goals and so on. So we're basically a monitoring and an acquisition procurement function. And we always ask ourselves, we're on the cutting edge, and we want to know who's capable. And capable is a tricky word because it means different things to different people. And let me tell you what it means in my vernacular. We're going to talk about the Rule of Two here in a couple minutes. The Rule of Two is a concept that was developed during the Eisenhower administration, which was in the Small Business Act of 1956. And during that, Congress said that, hey, if there's 2 small businesses that are capable, we can satisfy the need for competition. It takes 2 to tango. And therefore, we can also award, what's called competition. It's called full and open competition after exclusion of sources. Who do we exclude? The large businesses and the nonprofit businesses. We compete a contract among small businesses. capable small businesses. And this is for the next slides, the Rule of Two right here, 1956. Does all that good stuff. So what does it mean to be a capable small business? Do you have to do it all? No. Well, Boeing and Raytheon don't do it all. We already talked about those folks, just to pick on them. Basically, whenever we award a contract to a small business under what we call a small business set-aside, where only small businesses can compete, that small business must do 50% of the contract by dollar, okay? And I'm a big liar because I'm a government guy. Why? I don't mean to be a liar. I always cite you the rules, but there's 5,000 exceptions, and people say, hey, he's lying. No. Okay, so in that sense, a little tongue-in-cheek there. So the bottom line is the acquisitions will go to small business, and that's part of our job to make sure capable small businesses get it. A small business must do 50% of the lifting, let's say, of a whole program. Now, what happens if there's weird stuff that goes on? And let me give you a good example. We had a weather contract that we wanted to build fixed-base weather observation stations at many of our 175 Air Force bases throughout the world. And nobody makes all the stuff. Okay, we'd have to have wind shear detectors, anemometers, rain gauges, all Doppler radars, frangible towers that break when an airplane hits them. And nobody makes all that stuff. So we did the cost and pricing breakdown on it, and the small businesses bid a number of dollar bids. And the pricing folks looked at it and says, hey, they're buying stuff that's more than that 50% mark. Well, that's where one of those rules kicks in, the 13 Code of Federal Regulation, drawn up by statisticians, engineers, and the like, addresses that. It says, well, this is a common or conventional standard industry practice. Large businesses, nonprofits, everyone would have to follow that same thing where we buy piece parts and cobble them together. That goes out of the denominator. So it allows us to do small business set-asides, reach a little further into our industrial base to get those products and services to our warfighter. And the bottom line is we are looking for capable small business. Who's we? The entire federal procurement stand up. And the way we find it is market research, okay? Market research. I can't speak for all the other bases in the Air Force, Navy, or the forts in the Army, but the bottom line is at Hanscom, we are a development center. We build stuff that doesn't exist. A lot of piece parts do exist, a little bit. A lot of components of the systems do exist, but we're looking for folks who can cobble them together, integrate, invent, whatever. And we do that through the request for information and so on. We will ask you questions via sources, sought synopses, and requests for information. And to stay on track, in C5ISR contracting, to get started, you got to know your bona fides. Number one, you have to go through a rite of passage, which register on the System for Award Management, that SAM Gov site up there. Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, okay? They are now run by the Small Business Administration as well as the Department of Defense, the Defense Logistics Agency. Why does the Department of Defense have to kick in and teach small businesses and other businesses how to do business with the government? Well, industrial base again. Years ago, it was determined, Congress did their homework, and they found out that the disposable income budget of the United States for goods and services of the 40 or so agencies in the executive branch comprises, the DOD comprises any given year 2/3 to 3/4 of that. So Congress said, DOD, you spend the money, you go ahead and teach the businesses how to do business with you. So we stood up Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. When I was in the military, I had the good pleasure to run a couple of those as a lieutenant colonel, and that was one of the funnest jobs I ever had. They'll teach you everything, how to do business with the government, except how to kill us, how to file claims against us, how to protest, and how to do disputes. Other than that, they'll review your proposals for you. They'll teach you how to get in the system and do all that good stuff. So you're paying for it with your tax dollars. It's free. We have 6 of them in Massachusetts and commensurate numbers in the surrounding New England states. And they're at a college or university, and it's headquartered for us at the UMass main campus in Amherst. Peter Coker is a good buddy of mine, heads up the program, and the SBA also helps him run that too. So free education, folks, and you can go to them as many times as you want, as long as you want. Again, the only thing is that we won't teach you how to hurt us. Okay, know the rules of the game. This is probably rote for a lot of you. One of the things that gets people hung up is accounting systems and earned value management right below it. And that is basically how you account for the money in a government contract. When we get into cost type contracts, it gets a little tricky. But there are a number of them, probably within a few miles of where I'm standing, a number of CPA firms and accounting firms that help you get your feet off the ground if the PTAC can't do it, depending upon the complexity of your contracts. Geographical reach, we're federal. Keep in mind that our contracts are governed by federal law. Once you enter into a subcontract with another contractor, that will be under the auspices of the state of which usually that company is headquartered in. So it's a little bit of a mixture there, federal law, state law. And then to really confuse you, we also flow down a number of federal requirements into those state law-driven contracts. So that's why the PTACs and the small business specialists will help you on your way. No questions so far? Okay, when we build a strategy, we gather the requirements, the financials, and all that good stuff. It's pretty much by the basic groundwork. We perform market research. We look you up on the computers. We look at your responses to our requests for information, to our sources, sought synopsis, and various other questions. We might call you up and ask you questions out of the clear blue. I called a CEO last week on Thursday, and he had a team in our program office on Friday morning. And so there's a million ways to do market research. There are no real rules to it. We try to keep everything fair across the board, but we're out there searching for capabilities again. And my jaundiced view is to find those two small businesses where I can make a small business set aside, or we can direct that.
Bill has a question.
Sorry, Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For those in the room, talk about your technology readiness level.
Okay, right there, technology readiness level, designed by the Defense Science Board is a scale of 0 to 9 or 1 to 10 if you want to do the raw math. And I look at it a real simple version. Okay, there's two cavemen sitting there and they see a round pebble roll out of the cave and they're scratching their heads. You go, wow, it's TRL level 0. When you're about 9, you're at the Michelin plant where you have high-speed all-weather tires rolling out 1,000 a minute. So in between there's a lot of breadboarding, brass boarding, prototyping, testing, improvement, productization, you name it. The technology readiness level is, are you ready for prime time? And that's a good point, Bob, thank you. When we in the Air Force go out to develop a program, okay, some four-star general scratching his head like we talked about in the World War II era said, wouldn't it be great if we had a radar that would fly over the oceans and be there all the time or over anywhere in the world? Well, yeah, that's the cavemen scratching their head. We got some radars, we got the roundness, but what would that look like? Okay, well, a TRL level on that one, and I'm talking about the AWACS aircraft. We don't dictate that it's going to be in a Boeing 707 with a 29-foot radome that spins 3 times a minute on. We say, hey, industry, you're the pros. Tell us what it would look like. That's why the Soviet Union collapsed. They collapsed. They dictated the product specs under what was called the Command Administration Nomenclature System. We are smart enough to know we're dumb, and we want to come to you, industry. You do this for a living. Tell us how that you would do it. Would you put a tethered aerostat up from a ship or a land vehicle? Well, the answer was Boeing had the best design back in the 70s, and now we have AWACS, which is air dominance throughout, and that systems have been copied on other various Navy airplanes and other aircraft throughout the world. So the bottom line is the technology readiness levels is a grid scale, a graduated scale on if a product is ready for development. There's an associated thing called the manufacturing readiness level, which, we want to avoid those flow charts where there's a box in it that says, then a miracle happens. We're very risk adverse in the military, especially with your tax dollars. So in that sense, technology readiness levels, did I do justice? Okay. It's a graduated thing, like I said, breadboard, brassboard, prototypes, tests, and all that stuff. And okay, so but basically, it's to address the risk. We don't want to throw money down a money pit where we won't get a return on it by getting ahead of our headlights as far as technology development goes. And basically, the functional reps, quick preliminary acquisition strategy panels, and so on, ferret this stuff out. What am I talking about? Functional reps is engineering, contracting, financial management, legal, configuration managers, logisticians, the whole 9 yards, that beehive, ant colony approach to a program management office. We have every expert pour over the details of what we're going to buy. Why? To give our warfighters the best bang for their buck, and also to be faithful to our taxpayers. Our senior management, they'll look at that, our results of our market research, our technology. Milestone decision authorities. The program executive officers were established for responsibilities, especially, primarily. However, what they're called is a milestone decision authority in most cases. Not always, because sometimes a program level rises to the level of such national importance that the milestone decision authority is usually an Undersecretary of Defense for acquisition technology or logistics, or in the Air Force. So you're getting pretty high up there, pretty lofty. The little lapel pin, the keystone, which Dr. Rudolph displayed, distinguishes him as a key player. We call him senior executive service members of civilians. In the military, we call them admirals or generals. So you're getting pretty lofty when you see that. And these are folks who have been around, that have the experience, the knowledge, the wherewithal, and we rely on our senior management because they've been there and done that. So milestone decision authority, something that you send to us, might eventually end up on Mr. Kendall, the Undersecretary of Defense for AT&L's desk. Okay, it happens often. Right. Okay, moving on. We implement the strategy. I talked about how the USSR kind of screwed up and collapsed under their own weight by dictating product specs and so on. But we value your input. We really, really do, and I'm not just saying that. Meet with officials when circumstances allow. Dr. Rudolph talked about that. We, the small business specialists throughout the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, also have a responsibility to pipe up to our seniors when we see something that's remarkable and out of the ordinary that we feel our senior leaders ought to know about, whether it's a cutting-edge technology, a new method of doing things, a new process, whatever. Don't be shy, okay? Use us. We're the liaisons. You can't walk in the door. It's tough getting on a base. Small business specialists do it all the time. Whether you're putting roofing shingles on or devising new ways to get stuff in and out of the cloud and anywhere in between. Small business specialists, we might not be the smartest folks in the world, but we know the connections, okay? We're like glorified PBX operators.
I know what that feeling is.
Okay, industry days. All right. Okay, we have AWACS on base, which is one of our flagship programs. We have Joint Stars on base. Guess what's happening next week? Joint Stars recap industry days, the biggest program that hits Hanscom in over 20 years. The Joint Stars aircraft is akin to the AWACS. It has a synthetic aperture radar across the bottom of it that scans the ground. It's an airborne ground radar. It could find us neat stuff happening on the ground. It's getting a little old, and we are going to recap the whole thing. 4 elements to the Joint Stars. The airframe itself, probably a big business for a Bombardier, Gulfstream, Boeing, who knows, Lockheed. The intelligence suite, the electronics and stuff that a lot of you probably work on day to day in some way, shape, or form. The communication suite, we have to communicate the info we get when we're flying in and out of hazardous areas or standoff from one. And the last but not least, the radar suite. So there's plenty to go around. We had an initial round of industry days about a year and a half ago. About 300 folks came, about 50 of them from large businesses, and the rest from small businesses that wanted, anticipated, and probably will play a role in that program. I don't need to tell you, best time to get in elevators is the ground floor, best time to get his trains at the station. Look up in the FedBiz Ops or call Ellen or me, and we'll hook you up with the Joint Stars stuff. Again, most of the meetings, again, I think it's 2 to 4 May, I'm not sure. We have that back in the office. In the bottom line is they're taking reservations now for that. So space does fill up quick on base. So that's come on. The question I get is, when's the next industry day? Well, the industry days are basically a pre-proposal conference in our vernacular at Hanscom Air Force Base. We're going to lay out the RFP to you in draft form, and we want you to comment on it. Tell us where we're stupid. We love it. Free advice. Tell us if, industry would never do it this way, sir, because it's just not practical. We take every comment to heart, and believe me, we employ them and, on an applicable basis. There is no rhyme or reason to when we have industry days. Many, many, many contracts and relationships have been forged at the industry days. There's no guarantee and no two are alike. I recommend that when you go to one, collect a business card from everybody in there, make that one of your goals. Well, you'd be surprised the relationships that are forged there. It opens doors, it cuts shortcuts to the folks in large business who would hire you. I had the privilege of being an intern at IBM for a year when I was in the Air Force, and the first place I landed was in the small business office. And it kind of gave me training for my present job now. And believe me, those folks, they are hiring small businesses like crazy. Why? The capabilities enhance their productivity, increase their capacity, but there's also another reason too, and that is the federal government enforces a goal system for the large businesses to hire small. So I'll get into that in a slide. But we do use time machines. Let me segue a little here. Enterprise contracts, like I talked about in the net sense, we'll get to that in a couple slides here. But the bottom line is when we can, one of the most important things, like I said earlier, is we want to get an 18-month cycle to the warfighter, from needs to fulfillment of those needs. And so here's some of the neat stuff we do. We make enterprise contracts, IDIQ multiple awards, and I'll be happy to explain them to you in a meeting with me at a later date, but it's a little too much to go into it now. We can use other agencies. That's what Economy Act determination is. We need a general officer or SES to approve us to go to like a Department of Homeland Security or a Department of Transportation contract. But we can use other government contracts. Net Sense is out of Gunther, Alabama. We'll talk about that in a minute here. And the following slides are borrowed from the Net Sense. We have a number of contractors on each one of these contracts, except for this one down here. We haven't awarded that yet. But the bottom line is you can get on them. The National Defense Authorization Act of, I believe it was 2011, had one of the weirdest codicils I ever saw in it. And it said, it was introduced by the folks in Oklahoma, the U.S. representatives and senators in Oklahoma. They said, when NetSense awards their contracts, within 180 days, they will open on-ramps to businesses to every category. So we're still waiting for that to happen. You can still team with a lot of people. The contractors under each one of these categories, and I'll move on as we go, is pretty much at full capacity. Okay. This talks about a little about the scope and everything, and basically we do some development under it, but not a whole lot. Okay. So here's the questions for the Net Sense folks. My counterpart, Denise Baylor, wonderful, lovely lady. Give her a call. It's $17 to $19 billion. That's ceiling that this contract will be when it fulfills. So it's still in the relatively young years of it. Okay. Now back to your stuff. And ping us. We'll send you the Net Sense guide and turn you on to their website and the information on how to be a player there. There are opportunities. There are a number of local companies that are prime, and certainly dozens of them that are subcontractors on the NetSense program. The top of this slide actually says advice to small businesses. When you get a request for information, you want to be considered for a slot. Consider the RFI an essay test, not a true or false or fill in the blank. When we are determining capacity up to that 50% mark, we are going to see how you can do what you can do. We also want to know what you can't, how you're going to do what you can't do. Namely, I'm going to hire a large business. I had a guy last week tell me I'm going to hire a large business, and the colonel says, well, do you have experience managing a large business? And he goes, he had a great resume. So those are the questions that we can expect. Use Big Brother or Big Sister. That's the large business. They are eager to be your subcontractor too, trust me. They have a bigger profit margin on some subcontracts than they do many of their prime ones. Know the limitation of subcontracting. I told you that you have to do 50% of it. Some places it says 51. That's the 13 code and the Federal Acquisition Regulation. It says 50. Timeliness is important but not critical. What's an RFI, a source of such synopsis? It's basically the government asking you to stop doing what you're doing, drop everything, and give me a report on how you're going to do this thing, okay? And it says we want it by Friday at 3 o'clock. Those are artificial deadlines. You haven't run into anybody that's holding your feet to the fire on that, talk to the small business specialists. We can't always guarantee it, but we're pretty good at twisting arms of program managers. And that's why they have such long arms at Hanscom. Because, we'll get you, if it means the best for the taxpayers and the warfighters, then we're certainly going to twist the arms to do it. And most program managers and program officers will comply. Instructions to how you fill out a proposal and how we're going to evaluate it, okay? That's like almost an open book test in school, okay? So pay attention to it. This here in red, okay? And I talk about this, when you probably heard me talk about this. That's probably the most important line of my pitch. I had the good fortune to work in Defense Contract Management Agency where I ran quality control for basically all of New England, whether it would be submarine hatches, periscopes at Cole Morgan, tank firing control systems, you name it. For an Air Force guy, I was truly fortunate to be around there. I could tell you in the parking lot almost if the company's worth a darn. One of the things that the successful companies do almost without exception is they make a requirements traceability matrix. They get section M of the request for proposal and say, here's what the government's looking for. Read a step, do a step. Where did I answer this? It gets quite involved. Free insurance policy, free safety net. I've seen little mom and pop companies that make those little emitters, the little orange airplanes you see on battleships, aircraft carriers, and aerodromes. Do it with easels and colored yarn, okay? I've been to the Boeing Future Combat Center where they do it on Las Vegas books, Caesar's Palace sportsbook style computers. The most successful companies read a step, do a step, they spit back to the government, here's what you asked me, here's the answer. On the converse side, I've seen grown men and women crying because they missed something really stupid which separated them from being the winner and loser in an offering. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in bid and proposal money and valuable resources down the tube. What it boils down to is attention to detail. It's tough running a business, whether it's large, small, or nonprofit. Don't gamble it on one silly thing and oversight. Okay, that's the best advice I can give you there, and the most important slide of my brief. If you need experience, be a subcontractor. The large businesses have a mentor-protege program. A lot of them are funded, some of them aren't. I always recommend the funded ones. Why? Because the DoD has funded ones, the Air Force, Army, Navy will pay the large business to send experts to your business to get you up to speed on maybe it's quality control, maybe it's accounting systems, maybe it's whatever. If you get in a funded program, you're going to be golden. And guess who that large business is going to come to time after time because they know you're trained in their image? You. Right? We can tell you a million success stories. We currently want the large business to go for 36% of what they subcontract. 100%, whatever they subcontract, we want 36% of that. And we've been very consistent. Some bad years were there, and they're the exception, not the rule. So the bottom line is, it is very lucrative to be a subcontractor to larger nonprofit businesses. And it's also a way to get your training wheels on and get trained in the whole government acquisition procurement system. Okay, this is, the title of this is called Subcontracting Philosophy. This just shows you that there's a good faith effort required. Do we hammer that? Once in a while we do. We don't want, to be you just to be a name. Don't call us, we'll call you. We don't want you to get that answer from a larger nonprofit business. Sometimes we can enforce it. We do have a way of evaluating companies, the large businesses, if they do that. But the bottom line is I've also asked, first of all, the SBA lists every large business doing business with the federal government. It's on the SBA's subcontract directory in their website. There you go, okay? And it tells you the person at every industry responsible for hiring small businesses. That is something that not a lot of people know about, and I'm kind of disgruntled that it's such a secret. I did, however, ask my large business colleagues, and I've had two of them in my office over the last 2 weeks. They come to me looking for small businesses too. And I says, what do you look for when you're looking at a small business? And here's some of the answers they told me. The small business should contact the large business's small business liaison officer. That's just their small business person. Become familiar with their products and services and so on. And submit an email, your capability statement, make sure it's all pretty. In the Air Force, we have a saying, if there's junk in the aisle, how good can the aircraft engine maintenance be? So make sure you got a nice clean package there. And the large business will advise you. They really do. They take this seriously, and the government and the Defense Contract Management Agency grade them on that. They're going to forward your material to the purchasing office that's going to buy that stuff. And we've had a million success stories of people who show up at a doorstep wanting to sell the company this, and through their discussions with that small business liaison officer, they walk away with a contract that they never anticipated getting. So a lot of it is serendipity, a lot of it is luck, what I call convergence karma, being in the right place at the right time. Here's what the large business folks ask of you. And this is from asking a number of large business liaison officers. What type of business are you? Are you services, products, large business, small business, et cetera, et cetera? You can read them yourself. And this is the part where I say, in the military, we kind of have a little saying, if you can back it up and ain't bragging, this is where you really want to beat your chest and tell them we are good at this. We're world class. This is our, So nothing breeds success like success. This is what the folks in the large businesses told me what works and what doesn't work. Okay? The most important word in this one's right in the middle, perseverance. And you got to just keep at it. It's kind of a contact sport in some respects, and kind of one that will try your patience, but it's very lucrative, and if you have something to sell that's worthwhile, bingo. Here's our contact information. Ellen has some papers and brochures on how to get a hold of us. I urge each and every one of you to come and see us. We will sit down with you for a couple hours. By the time you get out, you can probably CLEP a marketing course, or at least a government contracting course. And your head will hurt. Right, Ellen makes your head hurt. She admitted it. Okay.